This is With the First Pick, the CBS Sports NFL Draft Podcast. This is episode 62. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's Rick Spielman. And today, which NFL quarterbacks are poised to have breakout seasons? Which QBs aren't going to live up to those face the franchise expectations? Well, that's what we're talking about today. The hows, the whys, and most importantly, the who's. I think my list is immeasurably better than yours, Rick, but we'll let the folks decide. Also, in case you missed it, on the last podcast, Rick and I talked about the non-quarterbacks still on their rookie deals, also entering make-or-break seasons. Names like Jets tackle Mekhi Becton and Chiefs wide receiver Kadarius Toney were on the list. You can listen to the entire pod in the feed. And coming up next week, it's getting to be crunch time, Rick. We're like 9 weeks away from the college football season. Next week, we're going to look at the top 25 players under 25 years old, add a little draft angle to it, see what we learned. And also worth noting, like I said, the college football season is somehow right around the corner. So Debo's got the old schedule laid out. We're going to do a little summer scouting podcast style, and we're going to go position by position starting in early July. And, of course, we're going to start with the quarterbacks. So that's something to look forward to and take you all the way through August. And before you know it, college and NFL will be back, and we'll be doing this podcast 8 days a week. So that's also something to look forward to.
A couple of points. So the Thursday show will be 25 under 25. If Debo can be a little bit more clear on the definition of what we're supposed to cover in that show, then that
I can tell you right now, 25 years old means people that are 25 or younger than 25. So you can't have Brett Favre on the list. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so that will be, and then Debo wants us supposedly while everybody else is on vacation to do our summer scouting in July. Which I have already started, so I'm excited to talk about some of the upcoming prospects at the positions.
I'm glad that Debo's doing this because it prompts me. Because I get, at this time of year, hanging out with my dog, staring at the trees in my backyard. So I need some prompting to make sure I get back and stay on target, to quote Star Wars, in terms of these players. By the way, what if someone like an area scout said to you, wait a second, General Manager Spielman, you want me to look at these players while folks are on vacation in July? What would you say to that scout?
That's your job. I don't care. You can stand on your head and spit wood nickels. You better just make sure you understand your area, and because everybody has the Blessed O and National list, so they've kind of set their schedules, and a lot of times the area scouts and even the college directors will start looking at guys. It's not as in-depth as the fall report will be. So I'm assuming Debo will say, hey, just give a quick glance, not a full detailed report on these guys coming up in the 2024 draft, as if unless, the instructions that Debo gives for these podcasts are a little bit more clear, I'll have a better understanding of what to do. But who knows where? We should do, because we should have a Where's Debo instead of Where's Waldo, because it's amazing how he can produce all these shows all over the world and never be in the studio to do this. So that's another incredible thing, but that's something different. But Debo will be clearly that we're just giving a quick overview of the upcoming 25 under 25. No, that's another show.
Oh my gosh.
The college prospects for next year. Are we doing top 5, top 10?
It's a quick glance from Ryan and a detailed report from you.
So I do 12 seconds and you do 2 hours. Okay, got it. Oh my gosh. Can you
Ryan's
imagine?
got to give me the top player at each position. You fill out 2 through 20.
Say, Rick, you didn't learn this lesson in middle school. You're the smart ass in the back of the class cracking jokes, and the next thing you know, the teacher's got you. Remember, you used to bang erasers? That used to be a thing. I don't think there are no more erasers. So you had to do all the after school stuff.
Yeah.
And a little preview for top 25 under 25. Rick, there was this thing called the internet, invented like 30 years ago. Tomorrow, go on cbssports.com. One of our writers will have a full list, and we will react to that. For example, last year Justin Herbert was number 1. He's 24 years old last year, 25 this year, so he'll still be eligible for the list. Joe Burrow was number 3. He was 25 last year, so he won't be eligible for this list.
All right, quick little preview, Rick. I'll just say this. We've talked a lot about Justin Jefferson in recent weeks because he's going to get paid very soon. In the universe where Justin Jefferson's number 1, he's 24 years old.
Yes.
Over a quarterback?
Well, Burrow is out, right? Mahomes
Justin
is out.
Herbert's still there.
Yeah,
Lamar
but
also out.
Yeah, so I'm going to say Justin Jefferson will be number 1.
Ooh, all right. All right.
Jefferson was number 5 last year on the list.
Wow. Okay, I like it. So that's what we're talking about. See, it's not that hard when you got to take a step back, take a deep breath, and say, I can do this, and then it's not that bad.
And then we're going to do 25 of the top 25 under 25.
Moving on. If you could do us, if you're still watching or listening, thank you, because I know that was tough. But if you could do us a favor, I have to ask you one more favor. Take a second right now, hit the old thumbs up if you're watching us on YouTube, and of course, you can find us at NFL on CBS. It really helps promote the old podcast to folks who might not know we otherwise exist. Last week, you kindly hit the thumbs up because we were celebrating Rick's anniversary, 36 years. This week, Rick, we're going to do it because it'll be a birthday present to me. My birthday's tomorrow. What'd you get me?
60?
I'm going to be close to 60 minus 10, if you can believe that. This handsome mug is going to be 50 years old.
You're going to be 50 years. What are you doing? That's a special birthday. I mean, you reached the
halfway to 100.
Yeah, you're past the halftime.
Way past halftime.
You're in the third quarter. Like when you get 60, then you're in the fourth quarter, and anything after that's a bonus. So,
yeah, but you're not in the fourth quarter. Like you're just before halftime in your neighborhood, because I imagine the average age on Sanibel is probably 87 or something.
That's why I moved here.
Exactly. Well, that was smart. Anyway, hit the thumbs up, please. That would be a huge help. And don't forget to subscribe to the old podcast. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And as B-Mac and Pat P like to see on All Things Covered, tell a friend to tell a friend. All right, let's get.
Oh, one quick story. I played golf on Saturday, and I was horrible.
Okay.
That was the worst round I had all year. So I played with this 85-year-old man who was a judge in Missouri.
Huh.
And I looked at him, and he had actually tried to go up to his bank, took a wrong step, fell, had all his front teeth knocked out.
What?
All face all scraped up, knees, everything. He looked like he just got in a fight. But it was the toughest, man. I said, for a guy that played Saturday that did this to himself on Monday, I can't imagine the pain of knocking all your teeth out.
Oh my gosh. Did he beat you too?
Yeah, he did.
Oh my gosh.
But it was the toughest man I've ever been around to be 85 years old, go out and play in 90-degree heat, 90% humidity with his teeth knocked out, and shot his age, 86.
The greatest generation right there, Rick.
And then drank cold beer, had fried chicken fingers. And
hey, don't worry about cavities. His teeth are gone.
And then smoked 2 cigars and went on in life.
Yeah. Debo aspired to be like that 87-year-old judge who has no teeth.
Yeah. And then we're talking about guys who opt out of bowl games. Come on.
Jeez. That guy did not opt out of a bowl game. I can tell you that. Football had not been invented when he was born, but that's not the point. All right. Let's take a look at some of these quarterbacks who we think have a chance to take a leap and make their teams a lot better, and some who might regress or maintain. And so we're doing this based on a really good story on CBSSports.com from Doug Clawson. You can check it out. The title of the story is NFL History of the Quarterback Leap. Just Google that or go to CBSSports.com. You can see it. And Doug's criteria is pretty straightforward. And I'll just read what he wrote at the top of the story. So he started a search with quarterbacks who jumped at least a quarter of the league's qualified passers, 25%, got 25% better from one season to the next in terms of a metric called expected points added. And you can figure out what that means on your own. But the idea is that they added more points to their team's total based on the way they played. They jumped 25% of the quarterbacks already on the list from one year to the next, and that's what got them on that list. And a couple of interesting facts here. Year 2 leaps. So quarterbacks going into their second year who had really big jumps in success, that accounted for 20% of all the quarterback leaps that Doug found in his story. Coaching changes were the second biggest leap, like Doug Peterson, for example. Jared Goff, for example, he had Sean McVay going in his second year when they left St. Louis and moved to LA. Justin Fields. Next up, getting top flight wide receivers also help young receivers. Hey, Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, you know about that really well. Rick, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Tua and Tyreek. And then finally, the hot trend that failed miserably in 2022, as Doug notes, acquiring a veteran quarterback. Russ Wilson, Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan. Woo-wee, that didn't work out. Prior to that, though, Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford obviously were huge successes. Both won Super Bowls in Tampa Bay and Los Angeles, respectively. So you understand why that was perhaps a game plan. It just didn't work out last season. And there's certainly that didn't change people's opinions. Derek Carr, for example, is now in New Orleans. We'll see what happens there. If, fingers crossed, Jimmy G can stay healthy, he's the quarterback now in Las Vegas. We'll see what happens there. But that's sort of the starting point, Rick. So going to take a look at these guys who took a leap in 22 and what allowed these guys to take the leap. So let's start with one of the best stories in football last year, and the guy that you talked about back prior to the draft as one of your favorite people ever to talk to on planet Earth, Jalen Hurts. So I mentioned getting a big-time wide receiver certainly helps. It helped Josh Allen with Steph Diggs. I think A.J. Brown on draft day, he was traded from Tennessee to Philadelphia. He was an impact player last year. They had Devonta Smith, who they drafted in the first round. Jalen Reagor didn't work out, but he didn't necessarily need to. They got the tight end position locked up. The running game's a big deal. Jalen Hurts is great with his legs, but he certainly wasn't the player coming into the league that we saw last year. So how do you account for all that?
Yeah, I'd just say Jalen Hurts, it's the one thing that stuck out to him is anytime he had to go out and prove himself, he seemed to answer the bell, whether that was at Alabama when he got benched during the I believe it was a national championship game, and then got beat out by Tua, transferred to Oklahoma, and then had a great year in Oklahoma, then didn't get drafted in the first round, came out and proved himself in Philly, took another big leap. So his ability to overcome adversity, his mental capacity on handling adversity is the difference between him and a lot of other guys.
Hey, let me stop you there because that's a good point. Now, he wasn't expected to go in the first round. I think, I don't know if you guys had him in the second round. I thought he had a better chance to go maybe the third round. Either way, all those things we talk about, the physical tools, they're comparable, maybe a little less in terms of the arm strength and accuracy than Will Levis. But I think the difference is what's above the neck. Is that right?
Correct. And usually that's the difference in these quarterbacks making the leap. You try to go back and see their history and more, the one thing that I always found very interesting was when we used to tap into their social media and people would get on them if they had a bad game. Well, the one indication that would really help me understand his mental makeup is if you had a bad game or you threw an interception, then how did you respond the next week?
Right.
And if they performed well the next week, then if you can establish a pattern on guys that maybe did not have a great game, but were able to rebound, and regardless of all the noise outside, they honed in, focused, and then came back and had a great game the following week. That usually talked about how they would be able to handle adversity. And anytime, especially at this position, when you can find patterns of them going through adversity, that's what you want to see is how they respond when they do have adversity. And that, to me, was the critical part that we learned as we grew and developed and trying to evaluate quarterbacks better.
Hey, Debo, let me ask you, when did you know that Jalen Hurts was the dude? I'm guessing it wasn't year one, was it?
Draft night 2020.
Oh, come on, Debo.
He had a game when he stepped in for Carson Wentz as a rookie against the Cardinals and performed super well against the Saints. And then if you remember Doug Peterson's final game where everybody accused him of tanking, he was horrible. Like I thought he should have been benched for Nate Sudfeld in that situation. So I always thought he was had all the intangibles in the world to be a great quarterback, but I wasn't sure if he was actually accurate or had the arm strength or anything. Right. Pretty early last year. I mean, year two was good progress, but pretty early last year was evident there was something different.
Yeah. And let me ask you this question, Rick, and we'll go to another player who took a leap in 22 that I'm curious your thoughts on. Anything specific in the interview that you had with him? I think it was at either the Combine or the Senior Bowl. That made you realize that he was different? It didn't have to be football related, just anything that got your attention?
I think just his demeanor and how humble he was. but how driven he was. There was a confidence, not cocky, when you sat there and spoke with him. And because one of the questions I did ask him is, you've been through a lot, bud, through your collegiate career. What makes you keep bouncing back? And he just had a true belief in himself. And, it was like the old saying, water off a duck's back.
Mm-hmm.
I had a bad game. I just move on. So those were the things. And, just talking about his background and why he moved on from Alabama, but never criticized Alabama, actually praised Alabama for his development, and, never put the blame on anyone or anything else. And if he did have a bad game or didn't perform, it was him. It wasn't anyone else. It wasn't like my receivers dropped the ball or my offensive line was horrible or didn't like the play call or I got, stiffed here at Alabama. It was what he learned from that experience and how he grew from that experience to move on. And those are the things that, like I said, never, ever came up with anything but praise when I tried to find out if he would blame anyone else on himself. Unlike some people on this podcast here.
Yeah, we could play for the listeners and viewers our conversation before we went on about all the finger pointing by some people who will remain nameless. It wouldn't be very Jalen Hurts like. I'll say that for sure.
Debo.
All right, let me ask you about a couple of veterans and how can you so I'll start this. I want to talk about Geno Smith and Jared Goff. Obviously, Geno had a great season, as did Jared Goff. I think both are poised to have good seasons as well. But let me see if I can tie it back to an experience you had with your guy. God, what's his name? The guy that replaced Teddy when he got hurt, that came in and had the miracle.
Case Keenum.
Case, thank you. Yes. So yeah, obviously you had no idea that Case was probably going to be that good, or he would have been the starter. Is there anything you can attribute that to, and perhaps see some connection between what we see with some of these veterans like Jared Goff and Geno Smith?
Yeah, Case was probably less physically gifted than the Jalen Hurts and some of the guys that we are talking about. It was one of those years that everything just came together. And he just, which I think was his best and most productive year in his entire career. And we just caught lightning in a bottle that year. But Case had that it factor on confident, not arrogant. But the guys seemed to really rally around him, especially when we started winning, when Teddy got hurt, when Bradford was hurt. And then all of a sudden, Case Keenum just did some phenomenal things, but he's always going to be a career backup just because of his physical limitations.
Right.
But made plays. And I give a lot of credit to Pat Shurmur, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, where he simplified things for Case. Not that Case couldn't handle more complicated, but because we were basically playing with the third quarterback, he really adjusted and simplified the offense to make it easy and just told Case, get the ball into the playmaker's hands. And that's what Case did.
Well, that's easy enough. Why don't you just tell every quarterback to do that? Problem solved.
Hence comes the offensive coordinator role.
So speaking of which, Jared Goff had a leap. He got better. Look, he was good under Sean McVay, but it felt like that he needed pieces around him. And you talk about the coaching, and that's one of the things that Doug Clawson, CBSSports.com writer who put this list together as a starting point for this conversation, he noted the coaching changes were the second biggest reason for the leap. So Ben Johnson's the offensive coordinator in Detroit. He's getting a lot of buzz as a guy who's doing all the right things and making things click offensively. How much of that do you attribute to Jared Goff's success? How much of that is just as he's a veteran, players around him, locker room, togetherness, all those sorts of things?
Yeah, I don't know, besides Armour St. Brown, if you can name another receiver on that offense that really sticks out to you. Jameson Williams hasn't played yet.
Right.
They have a good running game, but none of those are elite running backs, in my opinion. They have a really good offensive line. But I think Ben Johnson, who will be a head coach, if not this next cycle, the cycle after, because he's grown as well, but really smart, very intelligent. And the offensive coordinators that know what the quarterbacks do best and adjust their schemes to those strengths are the ones that seem to have the most success. And Ben Johnson has done a phenomenal job I think with Jared Goff and understanding what his strengths are. I mean, you look at year 1 to year 2, how he cut down his interceptions, and then how he calls and manages a game, and how he can identify the defenses that he is playing week in and week out, how he can identify how you can exploit some of the weaknesses of the defenses that they're playing against. So those are some things that I think make Ben Johnson one of the great coordinators. And I thought even back when you're talking about Case Keenum, Pat Shurmur did a phenomenal job with that as well.
And I think the same holds for Shane Waldron in Seattle, because look, a lot of credit goes to Jared Goff and Geno Smith, no doubt about it. But if you have a coach and a quarterback who aren't on the same page, we've seen that looks like on the field, and even sometimes it spills off the field. And Geno got paid, and rightfully so. Jared Goff still has a few more years on his deal, and there's a chance that he gets re-upped and he's not going anywhere. But I think that Geno's success is just New York, it didn't work out, and it could be that the coaching situation, that he wasn't mature, whatever. But it feels like this is right place, right time for both those players. And both those teams, by the way, the Lions are the favorite. Last time I checked, they were the favorite. I haven't checked recently to win that division. And Seattle's not the favorite, but I don't think it would surprise you. It wouldn't surprise me if they won that division.
No, was one of my side jobs. I'm trying to pick division winners that we can do sometime, although I know it's not related to this podcast, that aren't favored. And Seattle was one of mine. And I didn't know if Detroit was favored, but that's also another one.
Yeah.
Like, who would ever say going into a season that Detroit would be the favorite to win the NFC North over the last 20 years?
Yeah, you'd have to go back to they used to be in what they used to be in, whatever they were previously before they did the division realignment.
Central. It's when I first started out.
Yes, they were in the Central was that the Steelers and the Titans too? No, that's the AFC.
God, it's AFC.
Sorry. I was thinking, because I remember the Steelers and the Titans were in the same division for a while, and the Browns and I think the Ravens. Who was in the NFC Central back in the day?
Same. Detroit, Chicago, Minnesota, Green Bay. They just renamed it the North.
Oh, all right. Let's get to some 2023 quarterbacks, or the quarterbacks in the 2023 season that we think are going to make a leap. And I filled out the instructions properly that Debo asked for. You copied off my paper. My first guy was Kenny Pickett, or as I like to call him, Kenny Pickett. And he may not even be.
Don't do that again.
You know what? He may not be qualified for the 25 and under list. He might already be on the over list. So we'll check his birthday. But since you looked at so much, tell me about Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. Well, don't do that again. Well, this one was off of this list. It was pretty easy because you got Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, and your guy Malik Willis. So
preaching the Pete Prisco gospel.
Kenny Pickett was the obvious choice here on making the next leap. I think that a lot of the pressure will come on Matt Canada, their OC.
Oh, God. Listen, let me stop you. I'm sorry. I'm a Steelers homer, and I've been down on Matt Canada since 4 years before they hired him.
Okay.
Even before I knew he was into What's that?
Stop being a fan. Do your analysis. That's what you get paid to
okay. Take off your Detroit Lions underwear, and then we can talk. Go ahead about Matt Canada, because I think you're right. But just know that I'm not. I need him to be better.
Well, I think you look at his first year. Okay, he had Ben Roethlisberger, who was hanging on by a thread.
Right.
Probably could have retired a year early.
Yep.
And then last year, it went through Trubisky, who is not a starting quarterback, but he may be probably good backup.
Mm-hmm.
Can win some games, but not a 17-game starter. And then he took a rookie, Kenny Pickett, and look what he did with Pickett the second half compared to the first 8 games. Played much better. And I think he started to understand what Kenny Pickett strengths were and how to utilize those strengths. Kenny Pickett grew as a quarterback. They have good weapons, not great weapons around them, although they improved, I thought, their offensive line this year, which will also help by drafting Jones.
Roger Jones out of Georgia, yep.
And going out and signing the guard from Philadelphia.
Seumalo.
Isaac, who is it?
Isaac Seumalo.
That's correct. That's the correct pronunciation. So, Seumalo.
Yeah, Debo is the official former Eagles player pronunciation. Is that right, Debo?
Yep.
There you go. Seumalo.
So I think that with them improving the offensive line, with them being able to run the ball with Najee Harris. I mean, they did get Allen Robinson in a trade, I think, from the Rams this year.
Mm-hmm.
And they still have, with Pickens to Pickett, whoever Pickett to Pickens, that will continue to improve. And they still have Brown there as well. So I think they'll have enough offensive firepower, along with, I think the running game will improve because of them drafting the tight end from Georgia as well.
Darnell, yep.
So
right. They have George Pickens coming into year 2. And look, George Pickens had some maturity issues. That's part of the reason he fell, but he was on point. And Mike Tomlin, to his credit, has a knack for getting the most out of players who are sometimes, need to mature or distracted or whatever. So that was a lot of fun to watch last year when it worked. Deontay Johnson's still there. Hakeem Butler's an interesting story. Remember Hakeem Butler at Iowa State, Rick?
Yep.
The long wide receiver who ended up getting drafted. He may have been a late day 2, early day 3 guy, but he washed out, was playing in USFL or Arena League or somewhere. He now is in camp with the Steelers. What do you think his chances are? Because he balled out at the lower levels after college and pro, USFL. I can't remember which league he played in. And now he has an opportunity as a 27-year-old. Didn't make it first time around. How rare is it to sort of take another bite of the apple and have success?
I think it'll be hard for him to have that success. I mean, I know what he was coming out, but it's hard to all of a sudden change. Maybe he's an exception to the rule, but that's usually not the rule.
Yep, and Calvin Austin, and this happens a lot, it feels like, in around the league, not just Pittsburgh. He's a smaller wide receiver coming out of Memphis, was on IR all of last year, not because he was injured the entire year, but sometimes that's just sort of where you stow players who maybe need a redshirt year. So he'll have an opportunity to play in the slot, maybe do some return stuff. But in terms of Kenny Pickett, I thought he did make a lot of growth from the first half to the second half of the season, as you noted. And the way he finished the season in that Ravens game, that got people really excited. I didn't love Kenny Pickett coming out. I thought he's probably a second-round pick like most of these guys in that draft class. But you put him in the right situation, in Pittsburgh for a lot of players, it's the right situation. I just need the play calling to be a little
better. I think it will be with him understanding what Pickett can do and the way they adjusted it a little bit down the stretch and how Pickett performed, that I think that'll be a springboard for Pickett and your guy Canada going forward.
My guy Canada. You mentioned Des Ridder, Sam Howell, Malik Willis as sort of other players in the second-year bucket. I think Sam Howell has a chance. I liked him coming out. He was my number 2 quarterback. I won't tell you my number 1 is because Pete makes fun of me. But I think there's an opportunity. Now, as a 5th-round pick, if you struggle in year 2, that's a wrap. They're probably gonna draft someone or sign someone. So he's got a little more pressure on him than Kenny Pickett, for example. Desmond Ridder, you have, where are you on him? Because he has all the pieces around him: Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Drake London.
Yeah, Sam Howell reminds me a little of Baker Mayfield.
Yeah,
that's who I would compare him to. So we'll see if he has a better result than Baker has had, although Baker had some success early. Ridder, I think, with Bijan Robinson and some of the weapons they have on offense, this is he's going to have another year where I think he will improve. Just watching him, I remember watching him in the preseason. He can make the throws. He's very athletic for his size. I just thought he struggled with his accuracy a little bit, and I thought that was one of the things coming out of college was his accuracy. He had some pretty good receivers at the University of Cincinnati when he came out.
Alex Pierce among them.
Yeah. And so I think that he will improve. The question is, will he improve his accuracy? And that's one of the things that I think may hold him back.
Yeah, no, that was the knock on him coming out. So look, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get Rick's quarterback ready to take the next step, who is entering year 3. Talk about that right after this.
Someone hunted a hunter. This is the work of a serial killer. Pickett thinks he can do a cop's job.
Drop your weapon! Stand down!
No one trusts a lone man in the wild.
Joe Pickett Season 2 is now streaming on Paramount+. Use promo code Pickett for 1 month free trial. Credit card required. Terms apply.
All right, Rick, I think it's fair.
Pickett's the promo code? So I did get the wrong code on Paramount+?
You didn't. You didn't. You got the proper one that works for everyone except your computer somehow. What are the chances? Oh, sweet mercy. Give me strength. That's what my grandmother used to say. Lord, give me strength whenever I was there. Lord, give me strength.
50 going on 70 ever since this podcast started.
I know, right? I'm older than you are. All right. So this quarterback, his first season was basically a wash. You might as well just throw it away and forget about it. Last season, he got a new coach, which checks one of the boxes that Doug Clawson talked about in his story of helping the quarterback turn the corner. And I don't know if there could have been a better coach for Trevor Lawrence than Doug Peterson. Everything came together. I caught a little heat on the Pick Six podcast because over the first half of the season, I was like, all right, is Trevor going to figure this out or not? Because over the first 8 games, that team was 2-6. He had 10 touchdowns with just 6 interceptions, and his passer rating was only 84.8. Second half of the season, he caught fire. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the graphic here that Debo just threw up. The Jags went 7-2. They made the playoffs. They made it all the way to they played against the Chiefs. His passing yards per game went up more than 20 yards per game. Touchdowns went from 10 touchdowns to 6 interceptions over the first half. The second half of the season, 15 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, and the passer rating increased nearly 20 points to 104.6. So you think the arrow is going to continue to point up, or you think he's going to improve Trevor Lawrence's in 2023?
Yeah, I think he's going to be the next Joe Burrows, Josh Allen's of the world.
Okay.
The reason I say that is just with Doug Peterson, and then look at Press Taylor, who's the offensive coordinator, what he's done, who is a name that a lot of people don't know, but just keep a eye on him. He is the head coach Taylor's brother at Cincinnati.
Right.
So just keep an eye on Press Taylor, and even Mike McCoy was there, who's had a lot of offensive and head coaching experience in the past. Also did a phenomenal job with Trevor Lawrence. But to have a head coach that's an offensive guru / quarterback guru and Doug Peterson, this will make the whole difference in the world from Trevor Lawrence being a first round bust to a first pick overall bust to probably one of the top 5 quarterbacks that we're going to be talking about once the season ends. And the other reason I say that is when I watched that game in London, I believe it was against Denver that they played in London. And he threw that interception in the red zone right before the half. And then he had the ball in his hand at the end of the game to go down for in the final 2 minutes to maybe get a go-ahead score. And he threw an interception there. And then look what he did in the playoffs, where he had a disastrous first half. But what he did in the second half to beat the LA Chargers and come back and throw 4 touchdowns. I think he threw 4 interceptions in the first half.
Yeah, that was tough.
To mature and come back with that first half not bothering him and have the confidence and to go and do what he did in that playoff game, that just tells you how special this kid can be. And I think with the addition of Calvin Ridley, who we haven't seen in a year, so I don't know if he's going to be rusty or not, but he does have the ability to be a true number 1 receiver to go along with Kirk and Jones and Evan Ingram, who they franchise at the tight end. So ETN in the backfield, along with Tank Bigsby, who is one of my favorite running backs in this draft. I think they're going to have a lot of weapons, and they're even going to continue to grow more the second year under Doug Peterson's system. The biggest question will be offensive line and offensive tackle.
Yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube, Debo just flashed a graphic. Larger passer rating increase from year 1 to year 2. Joe Burrow. This list includes Joe Burrow, Peyton Manning, John Elway. Second on the list, Trevor Lawrence. Number 1, Terry Bradshaw. All these guys, 3 of these guys are Hall of Famers. There's a really good chance that Joe Burrow, if he continues along this pace for another 10 years, will be in the Hall of Fame. And Trevor Lawrence, it's a good list to be on. And I think you're right. Let me ask you this. 16-1 odds for Trevor Lawrence to win MVP. And I will tell you who Vegas likes better than better than Trevor, excuse me. And you can tell me how good you feel about Trevor given your glowing recommendation just a moment ago. So Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, and then Trevor Lawrence. You think there's a chance, any chance that Trevor could be the MVP?
A slim chance, as long as Mahomes is going and Burrow's going, they're going to be the favorites because they're always going to have success. I would put Lawrence ahead of Herbert, in my opinion.
Oh boy.
as a potential MVP if you had to put the odds out there.
So let's say you're starting an 8-8 team, just like an average football team, 8-8-1 team. The Steelers went 8-8-1 last year. Would you rather have for this season not Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence on that team?
Trevor Lawrence. I just
Really?
think he's got something special.
Man, I love Justin Herbert. But they're half dozen one, don't get me wrong. So in terms of tapping into the next level, we're talking about this Justin Herbert and this Trevor Lawrence grouping. That includes Justin Herbert. Justin Fields in there, Tua's in there, and a guy that I think is going to continue an upward trend and who wasn't that highly regarded coming out, in part because he was probably overdrafted in the mind of most folks in the media and fans and maybe even some NFL teams. Daniel Jones came out of Duke, where he was the only show in town at Duke. Like, let's be honest, all those guys now are doctors and lawyers, and Daniel Jones back there taking hit after hit. I think he has an opportunity to continue his upward trajectory, in part because, let's go back to Doug's list, coaching changes. Brian Daboll did what he did with Josh Allen in Buffalo, parlayed that into a head coaching job. And I think, and you can tell me what you think of this, one of the toughest things to do in the NFL is to give up power, especially if you worked really hard to get it. And I think it says a lot about how comfortable you are with yourself and how much you trust yourself and your ability to identify staff to help you, that Brian Daboll said, you know what, I'm not going to call plays in New York. I'm just going to be the head coach. Mike Kafka's the offensive coordinator. He did a really good job in conjunction with Brian Daboll. Is that rare to see? Is that something that you would stipulate as a general manager? You let the coaching staff handle that? How do you approach that?
I'm sure Daboll has an influence in the game plan as sitting in there.
He does, of course, but at least he's not saying, I'm going to do it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, no, because that's what made him, I believe, coach of the year.
Yeah.
Is because he wanted to be a head coach, and his game management and the way he handled everything from a head coaching standpoint, but he knows what he wants on offense. And Kafka, to me, who we actually had as a player at one point in is it Minnesota? I think we had him through. But I remember he is another young, bright mind that's going to be coming up. And a lot of people, when he was in Kansas City as a quarterback coach, gave him credit for Mahomes as well as Eric Bieniemy. And there was some rumblings out there that Kafka was one of the hot offensive coordinators, which ended up being true, and he ended up with the Giants. But his name has been mentioned a few times earlier on another quarterback who may not be as physically gifted, but he was so smart and a great backup quarterback, just like Kellen Moore. Some of these guys that have that intelligence, that are smart and understand quarterback play, may not be starting quarterbacks, but seem to make great offensive coordinators in this league. And so I agree with you, but I think with some of the weapons that he has coming back, if they can get Barkley back, that's going to make a huge difference. And you can see on the graphic that Debo put up for you fans watching YouTube out there. Sorry, Ryan, taking your thunder.
Go ahead.
But there's a huge difference when Daniel Jones has Barkley. He was 44 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and without Barkley, 16 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. So 91 quarterback rating with Barkley, 77 quarterback rating without. That tells you how important Barkley is. And that's a whole nother segment we can go down on, do you pay Saquon Barkley and how important he was to that New York Giants offense. And I think he almost had close to 50% of the touches on the Giants offense and why they were so successful last year. But I don't know if I'm going to agree with you if Barkley, I can't imagine them not getting Barkley done, but let's say worst case scenario, Barkley holds out or doesn't sign his franchise or they can't get an extension done. Do you think Daniel Jones is still the same quarterback?
That'll be a true test for Brian Daboll, his ability to figure this out, right? Because Josh Allen is more athletic than Daniel Jones. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But Daniel Jones made a huge leap.
I don't know about that.
You don't think so? Daniel Jones is a better athlete than we give him credit for, but in terms of overall athleticism, I guess I'm sort of throwing arm strength in there too, but few people have better arms than Josh Allen. But you think
I think defenses have to account for Daniel Jones and his legs, which they probably didn't earlier because of what Dabo did with him and Kafka did with him and the plays he made. I think he was right behind Barkley. He was the second leading rusher on that team.
Oh, he probably was. He almost ran for 200 yards against UNC back in his Duke days. And there's the game, I think it was against Debo's Eagles, where he fell down in the open field when he had a clear.
Yeah, and you can even, like I remember Herbert when I saw that Rose Bowl where he didn't beat him with their arm, he beat him with their legs. I think it was Utah that game, but I think Daniel Jones has some athleticism similar to Justin Herbert. May not have the same arm talent, but does have the same type of ability to run the ball.
Look at Debo. I was just going to read off the stat he put on the rundown. 5th most rush yards for Daniel Jones among NFL quarterbacks. The Giants quarterback record, if you watch on YouTube, you see the graphic there. 708 rush yards behind Jalen Hurts. I heard he can run pretty well. Josh Allen had 762, then Lamar, and then Justin Fields had 1,100 rushing yards last season. So, yes, you got it. He's athletic. All right. I'll give you that. But I think here's the other thing I'll say. I don't like it when Josh Allen runs. I'm not crazy about it when Lamar runs. I think Jalen probably is one of the smartest runners, but he still takes some hits. I don't want my quarterback taking hit, but I think the takeaway that you have to be most excited about if you're a Giants fan is that Daniel Jones was a turnover machine his first few years in the league with Joe Judge. Fewest turnovers per game among all NFL quarterbacks. Third most, and he had the third most from 2019 to 2021. So last season, fewest turnovers per game, which is a half a turnover per game among all NFL QBs. And that's after 3 previous years of just throwing the ball away and fumbling the ball away. And that has to be a Brian Daboll effect, I would imagine. Part of that's maturity. And I think the improvement along the offensive line, your guy, John Michael Schmitz, the center, was drafted to start immediately. And I think once you get that sorted, maybe that alleviates some of the concerns of Saquon. You obviously want him back. They still have Matt Breida. They drafted your guy, Eric Gray. Again, that's going to be a running back by committee if you don't have Saquon. It ain't going to be anything close to filling that production. But then you hope that your players, Jalen Hyatt, who they drafted in the 3rd round, the wide receiver in Tennessee, Paris Campbell, maybe he can find lightning in the bottle like Evan Ingram did when he left. The tight end situation, they have Darren Waller, so that's a huge addition. And I just think I think Daniel Jones and the team in general is going to be better. I think they won 9 games last year, 10 games last year. I think they're going to improve. I think they're going to battle the Eagles for the top spot. I'm not high on the Cowboys, but that's a conversation for another time.
I got another who would you rather have for 2023? Daniel Jones or Dak Prescott?
Let's say the Steelers. 8-1 Steelers, Daniel Jones or Dak Prescott?
8-1 Steelers.
Last year they were 8-1. I'm just taking an average middle of the road team, is all I'm saying. A team that finished at 500 last year or thereabouts.
Daniel Jones or Dak Prescott?
Yeah.
That's a tough one, Debo. You know what? Just because if this is a podcast and I can say anything and it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong anymore, I'm going with Daniel Jones.
All right. So the Steelers actually won 9 games last year. I thought they went 8-1. My bad. All right. How about this? How about the Packers?
Why do you keep saying the Steelers? Daniel Jones plays for the Giants.
I'm taking a team that finished middle of the pack average.
That wasn't the question. The question was Daniel Jones or Dak Prescott. Pittsburgh has nothing to do with anything in this conversation.
You need a team for your quarterback to play on. So I'm giving you a roster. So I was going to give you another roster. I'm giving the Green Bay Packers roster. They finished 8-9 last year. That's an average football team. And you take a quarterback that you want to take an average football team and make them better. So are you going to take Dak Prescott on this Packers roster that was average last year? Or do you want to take Daniel Jones?
So now you're explaining yourself a little bit better because I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast is as confused as I am, as usual.
All right. So is
just
it clear
for clarity, are you still taking Trevor Lawrence because he used the same exact situation last time?
Right. This is an average football team, an average roster based on the
Trevor
record.
Lawrence is no question. I'm taking Trevor Lawrence hands down.
Okay. All right.
So if you got to pick a quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Green Bay Packers, I'm taking Daniel Jones over Dak Prescott.
Both times. Okay. All right. I'll do one more. Oh, here's a good one. This team literally finished 8-1. So that is 500 and an average roster based on last year's wins, losses, and ties. Washington Commanders. So you can take Daniel Jones or Dak Prescott.
Why would it change if I keep taking Daniel Jones over Dak
Well,
Prescott?
you might think like maybe Terry McLaurin works better with Dak Prescott. I didn't like. I'm trying to give you options here.
Oh my God, you're dealing in hypotheticals, which are driving me crazy. Okay. Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Dak Prescott. Now you can ask 150
All
different
right.
teams. Go,
All right, I'll ask one more. I'm kidding. I'm not going to ask another one. All right. Rick obviously doesn't talk to the general public with hypotheticals. Al Bundy says in the live chat. I think this is true.
hypothetically speaking, I would take Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Dak Prescott, and then you can plug them in any way, any team you
Well,
want.
that's all you had to say. Debo, have you ever seen Rick so exasperated about a simple football question?
Yes. Last show.
Fair enough. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll continue this stroll down fun time lane.
They say patience is a virtue. But for some things, we can't wait.
That's right. If you're watching on YouTube, CBS has the Super Bowl in Las Vegas in 2024. That's going to be something. Rick and I were just there just over a year ago for the draft. So looking forward to going back there. All right, Rick. These are quarterbacks that have been counted out, and maybe they shouldn't be. Let's see. I'm going to start with my guy, and I'm going to ride this guy until he gets cut and goes into the insurance business. But until then, he's my dude because I liked him coming out. He had a promising rookie season. They couldn't have gone more backwards last year. Apparently, when you have a defensive coordinator calling offensive play calls, it doesn't work out for you. I'm talking about Mac Jones, of course, in New England. Bill O'Brien, we'll go back to the old trope we've been talking about for the show. If you have a coaching change in a positive direction, it can typically help a young quarterback. Bill O'Brien and Mac Jones have a relationship from their time together at Alabama. Look, Bill O'Brien can be prickly, but I don't think that's a surprise to anyone that's worked with him, player or coach. We've seen the clips from way back when he and Tom Brady were going at it on the sidelines, and those teams won a lot of football games. Are you of the opinion, as I am, that Mac Jones is going to turn a corner here with Bill O'Brien and a little better football team on paper, it feels like, in New England?
Yeah, I think Bill O'Brien is, even though he's a demanding coach and maybe a coach that has short fuse at times because of how demanding he can be, I think that's exactly what a young quarterback needs. As long as that young quarterback is mature enough to handle that if he does get best way to put it without being kicked off the air, if he can handle the pressure of the offensive coordinator putting on him and the demands the offensive coordinator putting on him. And I think Mac Jones' personality thrives with that type of coach.
I think so too. Yeah.
Some quarterbacks would go in the tank. I think Mac Jones is the opposite. I think that's what Mac Jones wants. He wants someone demanding, someone that's going to push him, someone that will maybe at times, not that he needs motivation, but get in his face if he does make a mistake. I think all that, and knowing Mac Jones' personality, will thrive in a situation like that. Do they have enough playmakers on offense? I think they do. Getting Gesicki, Juju Smith-Schuster coming in from Kansas City. I don't know if they're ideal. I mean, I don't know if I put them in the top 10 in skill positions. They're going to still have to be able to run the ball. But my biggest concern is because Mac Jones is not overly athletic, more of a pocket passer. The offensive line, especially at the offensive tackle position, they did not address that. Riley Reif's their starting right tackle right now, unless McDermott can step up and beat him out. Trent Brown's on the other side, who may be a better right than left tackle. They drafted 3 interior linemen, but didn't address the offensive tackle position, which would be my biggest concern.
Hey, let me ask you this, Rick, as a general manager who's seen a ton of quarterbacks come through your teams, one of the concerns, if you want to call it that, with Mac Jones is that he struggles to let bad plays go. And he has a ton of confidence, don't get me wrong, but he internalizes it, and it sometimes manifests itself in a way that maybe comes across as immature, like on the sidelines or whatever. How do you go about trying to get him to knock that part out?
Well, I think that's what Bill O'Brien will do.
Okay.
Not only will he be demanding on him, but he'll be demanding on him to let it go and move on to the next damn play.
Right.
And I think that type of coach is what will make Mac Jones excel next year compared to what he showed last year.
Do you think he improves on his rookie season? That team went 10-7. His passer rating was 92.5 his rookie season. Last year, it was all red numbers compared to his first season.
Yeah, I think that he'll get close to what he did his rookie year, and maybe, who knows, may take a jump. I think Gesicki will make a difference as a option for him in the passing game, even though he's not a blocking tight end. The biggest question is, will that offensive line be able to keep him upright?
All right. I'm not going to ask you whether you think he's going to be good on the Steelers because I don't want to even go down that road. But I will ask you this. Who has a better 2023 season? Mac Jones, who is my guy, or a guy that we have some concerns about, and Kyler Murray coming off the ACL in Arizona?
Mac Jones. I'm not a Kyler Murray fan at all.
So let's see. Debo notes that Kyler underwent ACL surgery in January, so it'll be close for him to be ready. He probably won't be, I would imagine, even though the timeline is enough where you can play, but they may want to hold him out. We'll see whether he starts in late September, early October, or whatever. But all that said, even if we go on the same number of games played, let's say Kyler only plays 12 games, and we do the last 12 games of Mac Jones's season, you think Mac's going to put up better numbers?
Yes. No question about it.
What are your concerns with Kyler? New coaching staff there, new general manager. The roster is not great, so there's some things to sort out there. So start there. Like, what are your concerns with Kyler as a player and concerns with him on this football team?
One, I do have the utmost respect for Jonathan Gannon. I think he's going to have to grow as a head coach. Drew Petzing, who is the offensive coordinator, who was also in Minnesota when I was there, another bright young offensive mind. But this is the first time he's going to be calling plays. So I think they're going to have to grow just as well as the players grow.
Hey, Rick, let me interrupt you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to ask you this. What are you thinking if you're general manager sitting in the suite and you see, and maybe I'm making too big a deal of this, but I'm just thinking about the young coaching staff coming in and having to deal with this. When Kyler and Cliff would go back and forth, Cliff Kingsbury, the coach who was fired, on the sidelines before a timeout, and it looked to be some level of disrespect. Maybe that's normal, but are you at all concerned as a GM trying to get a young coach to be able to communicate with a quarterback who seems to have his own thoughts about how things should be done?
No, I think that's conversations you have, on Mondays and Tuesdays. And, and Monty, I don't know how much experience he's had in that, but usually with new coaches I've been through, and we had a lot of discussions on how to handle certain situations and what we're dealing with and what the personality of the player is and how do you handle that personality. Some guys, you have to handle differently than others. My biggest concern with Kyler Murray is that I don't think he's a pocket passer, and coming off an ACL, I don't think he's going to be able to move as well as he does. And I don't think they have great talent around him. So, especially with D Hopkins, have they cut with him? And you look at their receiving core, you can put half of those guys in a Volkswagen and fit the whole receiving core because they're so small.
Except my guy, Michael Wilson, out of Stanford.
Yeah, well, he'll be on the sideline hurt just like he was at Stanford all the time. So,
future Hall of Famer Michael Wilson. So, right, they have Hollywood Brown. They have Rondell Moore, who's even smaller. Greg Dortch, who's even smaller than that. So, right, that's a huge concern. And they're big receivers. Zach Pascal, Michael Wilson's a rookie. Zach Pascal's been a backup for most of his career, certainly not a starter. So that's a concern. Tight end, they have Zach Ertz, who's a little older. Trey McBride, who I liked coming out of Colorado State a few years ago. He's an option. The offensive line has Paris Johnson Jr., who they drafted. They traded back up to get, I believe. So there are a lot of questions. Right now they have Haji Froholt listed as a starting center.
Yeah.
That's not great.
No, and you're saying let's just hang on for a year and then hopefully we get Caleb Williams in the draft next year.
So, we sort of joked about this when I did my way, 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 way too early 2024 mock draft. If you have they're going to have 2 first-round picks because of the Texans trade that allowed them to get Will Anderson. If you have picks 1 and 2 or whatever, 1 and 3, you're taking Caleb Williams?
Well, as a teaser for future podcasts, we will talk about the quarterbacks coming up in the live podcast. Is that right, Debo? Aren't we supposed to put teasers out there and what I actually think of Caleb Williams now that I know I have to do them?
Yeah, Ryan actually has QB1. Remember, you have QB30, so just Start scouting.
Oh, you walked right into that one. All right, so you have not high hopes for Kyler, in part because of the injury, in part because of the play style, in part because the lack of playmakers around him, new coach, new offensive coordinator, new general manager, a lot of concerns.
Yes, a lot of concerns.
I had the same concerns. I don't disagree with you. I like you and I both like Kenny Pickett. You and I both have questions about Kyler Murray on that team, given his situation health-wise. All right. Let's go to guys who are looking to jumpstart what were once promising careers. Jimmy Garoppolo's on this list. He's still battling injury. Jacoby Brissett's on this list. He's primarily a backup at this point, but he is a guy that you want as your backup if you need him to play, because he seems to only win football games. And then we'll go to the guy you want to talk about here, Deshaun Watson. And year one was not great in Cleveland. He had not played in 18 months or 2 years or whatever it was. By the time he finally got back on the field in Cleveland, he looked rusty. No surprise there. Deshaun in his prime was one of the best players in football. There's a lot of off-field things that we're not even talking about here, but that's part of the equation. You think he has a chance to bounce back?
I do. I think with the second year in the system, with him having a full off season, full training camp to get ready for the season, without the distractions, on the off-field stuff that he went through, and getting asked about that, and his teammates getting asked about that probably every time during training camp, waiting for the suspension to come down, the final suspension to come down.
Right.
So there were a lot of other factors, and I think they improved their defense. They were pretty aggressive to go out, even though they didn't have a first-round pick to go out and help the defense. They hired Schwartz to come in and as a new defensive coordinator who has a ton of experience. I believe that they're a good offense. They have ability to run the ball, although I think Chubb needs another partner. We'll see if Hunt ends up coming back there or not. They have enough weapons on the offensive side at receiver. So I think that Watson will be much better than he was last year. And I don't know if he'll ever get back to where he was, but he will be a factor for the Cleveland Browns in challenging, which I don't think they will, but if there was one dark horse in that division, you may pick Cleveland as your dark horse if Watson can get back to the way he was.
Man, he better get back to the way he was, because the issue when you give someone a 5-year, $230 million all guaranteed deal is that you cannot move on from them without taking a huge hit financially. Do you want to guess what his post June 1st dead cap would be if they released him after this season, after the 2023 season?
I can't even imagine. It put them in a hole for years to come.
Their 2023 dead cap a year from now, should they release him June 1st, $157 million.
Okay, well then, you have no chance of fielding a team except free agent.
You have no recourse. Like, he is your dude. So that's going to be the case for a long time. Oh boy. 2026 dead cap hit. If you go out that far, $64 million. So even 3 years down the road, he's your guy. So it has to work out. I'm not as bullish on bullish on Watson as you are, but we'll see. I mean, he has to be able to recapture the form that he had. And I don't know if that's an easier thing said than done.
Well, who the hell you going to pick off that list out of those are some tough names.
They are tough names. I'll tell you my guy.
Who?
By the way, the Browns are plus 380 to win the AFC North. So they're underdog.
I have no idea what that means. But
that means that they are long shots to win the North behind the Bengals.
So Debo, if I put $1 on it, then I can win $380.
Yeah, exactly, Rick. You win. I'll just tell you, you get your $1 back and an additional $3.80.
There you go.
No, it's $380.
You can put 100 down to win 380.
Oh, you can put $1 down to win $380?
You can put 100 pennies down to win 380 pennies, so that makes you feel better if you're going to work in hundreds.
Bengals plus 125, Ravens plus 275, and then the Steelers at plus 500.
I was going to say that'll be close, Steelers and Browns. Yeah,
I was going to take all that money I won off Ryan and maybe put it down $1 to win $380 on Cleveland.
All right, you can do that. I'll put $1 down for you, and the payoff is $3,800. By the way, By the way, speaking of the Steelers and their odds, you guys, if you haven't, check out All Things Covered with Bryant McFadden and Patrick Peterson, who is now a cornerback in Pittsburgh. Rick signed him in Minnesota, where he had a really good run there. He's now in Pittsburgh, and he is 30. Is he 32 or 33, Debo?
He will turn 33 in a couple weeks.
And he said he feels better than ever, and he is looking to prove some people wrong. He wants to play. He wants to play a little man defense. He didn't get a chance to do that last year, he said, Rick. So he's looking forward to playing a little more man this year and making plays. So he would probably take issue with being plus 500 in terms of their chances of winning the North. The guy I'm going to go with, you talk about this list that you weren't happy about in terms of names to pick from. I'm going with Derek Carr.
Oh,
now Derek Carr is not everyone's favorite flavor of ice cream, right? Like some people just absolutely cannot stand Derek Carr. Some people like him. I like Derek Carr, and I think, I don't know. Feel like sometimes he's very sincere when he speaks to the media. I think some people take it the wrong way. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether you're nice or not. You got to win football games. And the way things did in Las Vegas probably wasn't a lot of fun for him. He got benched midway through the season, quit going to the games. I think there was a mutual agreement that he just wouldn't show up to be a distraction. Fair enough. So now he's in New Orleans. I mean, he's an upgrade over Jameis, right?
yeah, I would say that.
Yeah.
I'll agree with you.
And Jameis came off the ACL after a pretty strong start under Sean Payton a year and a half ago, however long that was before it tore its ACL. Last year, not quite as good with Dennis Allen as the head coach. Pete Carmichael's been the offensive coordinator there forever, so he understands how the Sean Payton offense works, although it didn't work quite as well last year with Jameis and Andy Dalton. Michael Thomas, fingers crossed. You hope he comes return. We talked about Deshaun Watson returning for him. It'd be awesome if Michael Thomas could play like the player he was 3 or 4 years ago. Chris Olave's coming off that great rookie season. We talked about him on a recent podcast. They had the offensive line, which is in pretty good shape. They drafted A.T. Perry, who Rick and I weren't quite as high on as some other people were, the wide receiver out of Pitt, but he's a big target. Defensively, I think they're in good shape, and they play in a division where it's wide open. Alvin Kamara needs to return to form. They have Jamal Williams, who they signed from Detroit. They drafted Kendre Miller out of TCU. And I think, and maybe this is fair or not, I think there's less pressure, maybe media-wise, maybe not fan-wise, but media-wise, playing in New Orleans than maybe Las Vegas or bigger markets, like even Oakland. And maybe that helps Derek Carr sort of assimilate into the city, into the team, and ease into perhaps what should be a better campaign. You buy any of that stuff?
Yeah, I could buy that. I think the whole critical piece will be Michael Thomas and what if he can stay healthy and if they can keep his distraction under control.
Yeah, and Kamara, I'm not sure his off-field issues have been resolved yet or not, but if he misses time, that's a problem as well. Hopefully all that gets taken care of, and Derek Carr has a full assortment of players to play alongside him. But Trevor Penning, who they traded up for the draft in last draft, he suffered injuries last year, didn't play a lot, so he's going to have to start. We'll see where he is in his development in Northern Iowa. So he's a smaller school guy going up against NFL players. We'll see what that looks like. He had a great Senior Bowl, but didn't play a lot last year. Eric McCoy, the center, is a really good player. So is Cesar Ruiz, the interior offensive lineman out of Michigan. So the pieces are in place. The division is wide open. And I think if they hit on the quarterback, no surprise here, this will be sort of reversing the trend that didn't work out last year when we talked about veteran quarterbacks going to new teams, Russ Wilson, Carson Wentz, and Baker Mayfield, for example. And this year we have Aaron Rodgers, we haven't even talked about. He'll be the Jets. We'll see how that works. Let me ask you this. Who has a better season, Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers. Not even the same category.
So you're not concerned at all about Aaron Rodgers stumbling a little bit at a new place, new team, tougher division?
No.
Okay.
Ryan,
right.
Derek Carr, 40-1 to win MVP. I want to read a couple of names below him on that list.
Ooh, okay.
Worse odds, and want to get your reaction. Jared Goff.
I like Jared Goff better. How about you, Rick?
Jared Goff.
All right.
Russell Wilson.
I'm not. I know Rick's going to say Russ because he has to, but I'm not taking Russ.
I'm taking Russ.
He covered his face.
Daniel Jones.
I'm taking Daniel. I somehow trust Daniel Jones more than Derek Carr.
I'm taking Daniel Jones.
I want to get Rick's ISO shot for this one. Wait.
Wrong ISO. There we go.
Kirk Cousins
over Derek Carr. You know what?
Although I got to go with Kirk Cousins, although they're revamping that entire offense. No Cook. Addison, I can see Alexander Madison, as long as they have Justin Jefferson, and then you got a really good tight end, TJ Hawkinson. They just got to play better defense, but I would take Cousins over Carr.
I think I trust Kirk Cousins more in big moments too. And I've given Kurt a hard time about some poorly timed interceptions, but Derek Carr, I just don't. I like him. I don't know if I trust him in crunch time. So I'll go with Kirk Cousins too. It's close.
And then last one I'll do is Matthew Stafford.
I'm going with Derek Carr. Matthew just can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I think he's reached the end of it. They're in a rebuild mode, and I don't know if he'll be able to stay upright this year and play a full season.
Oh, look at that. We agreed about everything except the Russell Wilson one. Big surprise. All right. That's a wrap. Rick has a side job he has to get to. As always, thanks for joining us. And I'm trying to wrap this thing up here. That's it for episode 62. As I said, thank you for joining us. Remember, you can give us a thumbs up. If you're watching it on YouTube there, subscribe to the podcast, leave a 5-star review. Thanks as always to my guy, Rick. Thanks to Devo for producing. Thanks to you guys for watching and listening. And we'll see you guys Thursday when we talk about 25 players under the age of 25. Rick has this list ready to go. So we'll talk about that later this week.